How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto. I'm sitting here with Coach Dan Lever from Silverton, Oregon. Coach Lever, why don't you start it off by kind of telling us a little bit about yourself, your progression, how'd you get to where you're at now?
Thanks for having me. I've been in love with this game since I was 9 years old. Started going with my dad to practice. I've just been in love with the game ever since. So I'm one of those people that knew that I wanted to be a football coach most of my life. I wasn't always outwardly honest about that to everybody because it didn't sound as cool as wanting to be a doctor or a lawyer or an astronaut. Started there for me. Then I had the opportunity to go to Linfield College, which now Linfield University, which was one of the best decisions I've ever made in terms of preparing myself long term to be in this profession. I draw a lot from what I learned through that experience and the mentors I had there, and Jay Losey, Joe Smith, Doug Heyer, Neil Fendel, Thomas Ford, Jermaine Payne, Jackson Vaughn. I mean, just unbelievable.
Trying to get Vaughn on, we'll see. Trying to get Vaughn on,
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know.
good luck.
No doubt.
Good
No
luck.
doubt.
I think I'm a busy guy. That's a pretty busy guy. Ad Rutschman, getting to be around him. So in terms, I think setting myself up for long-term success, I feel like that was just a lucky or good move. I don't know if it was luck or if I really had that much foresight. Great experience there. When I graduated from college, 2008 was the huge economic downturn time, and nobody was hiring PE teachers or health teachers because that's what I got my certification in. And I felt like I had people in the profession that I knew and was well connected with, and even then, nobody was hiring and nobody was retiring. So I went to Oregon State to work on my master's degree. I was completely out of football for a year, and it was probably the most miserable year of my entire life. My entire life, I'd been a part of a team, and I wasn't anymore. So I was looking for any way I could get my foot in the door, coaching and being a part of the sport again. Opportunity at a small high school that had had little to no success in football, and I got hired as the head football coach at Jervis High School when I was 23 years old. I think it was the finalists were me and two other dads. So
You said Jervis High School? Where is that?
Jervis High School, who has been to the playoffs the past couple of years. So go Cougs.
Is that Central Oregon? Where is that?
That's just southwest of Woodburn.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I learned a lot from that experience as a first-time head coach. I think the biggest thing I learned is what I didn't know, because I think a lot of young coaches fall into the same trap I did. I went to a successful high school, we were successful there. I went to Linfield College. We were successful there. I'm just going to roll in with my magic wand and here we go. And it was a lot more than that. And I think the biggest thing I took away from that is that I needed to learn a lot more in order to really do this thing well. So I was there a year, and kind of the deal is I subbed there for a year, and there was a health teacher that had been there a really long time, and if he retired, I was going to get his job. And
He didn't retire.
and he didn't retire. One of my proudest moments, I think, when I was there was we did some fundraising. We bought the kids new uniforms. We took them to a team camp. I had some people tell me that I'd never be able to accomplish taking those kids to a team camp. We did that. We got a lot better. We were going to be a lot better that fall. And then I get a call from Thomas Ford when I'm at team camp. One of my my college running backs coach, who is now at a Division II school in Oklahoma, and he goes, "Hey, how do you feel about being the tight ends coach with me at Southeastern Oklahoma?"
Now, were you married at the time? Were you and your wife
I
just
wasn't
dated?
married at the time. I was long-term girlfriend going on 4 years. And, to that point in my life, I hadn't really strayed outside of about an hour of where I grew up. Where I went to college was about 45 minutes away. My first job was not too far away from where I grew up. So had really strayed from that bubble. And so it was a big turning point for me. And number one priority was to secure the number one recruit, which was my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife. So number one, I had to propose to her and get that on lockdown if I was gonna go do this thing. Um, and then I drove a 1991 Honda Accord across the country in August, and it leaked Freon the whole way there, and in about West Kansas, the AC went out, and it was 115 degrees and 90% humidity, and I thought I was driving an oven. And so my fiance went with me, my wife now, and when we got to Durant, Oklahoma, and we got out of that thing, it was just like we were so tired, and it was just like it was such a foreign place. And so I spent 2 years there with Coach Ford. I had a great experience. I mean, got to coach some really good football down there, got to recruit Texas. So I got the Texas experience. Most of our kids were from Texas on a roster. So I got exposed to a lot of awesome things that were pretty foreign to me. Some schemes that I wasn't familiar with that I learned a ton from. I obviously learned a ton from Coach Ford when I was there, but a great mentor to me there was a guy named Chad Spear, who was our offensive line coach, who was one of the best, I think, in that area for sure. We still talk all the time. But, I did everything. When you're a GA type guy at a small school, you have to do everything. Everything from the laundry to breaking down film to running to the store to buy the players water to recruiting visits to organizing all kinds of stuff. And then having to coach a position on top of that. So I'm one of those guys, man. I think I made $650 a month. I got a free lunch every day in the cafeteria because I had to monitor the players and make sure that they didn't do anything stupid in the cafeteria. I'd go to the Baptist campus ministry on Tuesdays for dinner. I'd go to the Catholic Church on Wednesday for their free dinner. And I ended up living in the locker room. And I slept on the couch in the coach's office. And I loved every single bit of doing that. It was all football. And I still draw from those experiences and all the time. Then from there, wanted to get back to the West Coast really bad. Got an opportunity to coach offensive line at the University of Puget Sound, which was another great experience. Really nice school. And that Tacoma, Seattle area is really kind of fun to live in when you're newly married. There's a lot to do. Beautiful area. And then I got the opportunity to go coach at Santa Barbara City College in Santa Barbara, California. One of the most beautiful places in the world. I mean, I think it's the closest college football program to the ocean. I mean, we literally would finish practice and walk right onto the beach right there. We even did like drills out on the beach and then come back to the stadium. And we had some success. I think that was kind of a beach town, and another great mentor there, Craig Meropoulos, who long-time Division I assistant at multiple stops, taught me a bunch in leadership. Craig is a great leader of men. Again, another great experience there for 3 years. Had some really good offensive lines there. We broke every rushing record they had. A lot of those players I still talk to. I think one of the cool moments for me there is how diverse my offensive line room was. I mean, I had a Muslim kid, I had a Jewish kid, I had African American kids, I had every kid from every single background you can think of, and we all just absolutely loved each other and had a great time and accomplished some great things. So that was really fun and rewarding for me. I think that level of football is so neat because everybody's story is so different at the junior college level. and you can have a Division I kid in the room, and you can have a guy that is just there to play football for 2 years and have fun. It's really neat. So my wife and I really enjoyed California. We loved the weather, we loved the lifestyle, but we wanted to have kids, and just it wasn't sustainable for us to have kids. We couldn't see ourselves having the life that we wanted for our kids staying there because it's so expensive. The cost of living is unbelievable. We decided to come back to Oregon. A position at Tualatin High School had opened up in the Portland area, and it had been a blue blood high school when I was growing up in all sports, and especially football. And I had finally felt like I had the knowledge and the skills to be a head high school coach again after trying it the first time around. And so we came back.
What was that time gap between your first head job? You said you were 23 at Jervis.
23. I was
And then when you got to Tualatin.
31. So older and wiser, as they say.
But still really young.
Still pretty young, and I was stepping into the best league in the state with Westland and Lake Oswego and Lake Ridge and Tigard and Oregon City, and Sherwood was in the league at that time as well. And I remember some of my buddies back home, because Tualatin had sputtered, they said, "You're crazy, man." And I knew I wasn't, because I made a great connection with the athletic director there, Ted Rose, who I still talk to all the time. And the principal at that time was great, Darren Bernard, who just is retiring and getting out of education. But I walked around that place, and they had a 8,000 square foot weight room that was brand new. They had kids walking around that hallway that weren't playing, that looked like they could play. I made a lot of phone calls to people to kind of scout it out, and it just seemed like it was a sleeper. And they had some really good coaches on staff there, and one of my best friends now, he wasn't then, was Eric Moen, the defensive coordinator there, who honestly taught me a lot about how to be a good head coach and how to listen to your assistants, and one of the better defensive minds I've seen at any level. That guy knows ball and can teach, is a great teacher of football. So we were at Tualatin, and it just took off. It took a little bit, but it just really took off. And we had a great time there. And then kind of came another crossroads was during COVID. We'd always wanted to buy a place with some property, kind of get out of the suburbs, kind of out near where I grew up. And we just fell into this crazy low interest rate farm, and the house was completely shot. And we had that COVID year where we didn't play in the fall, and I just really kind of was like, I want to get back to the country. I want my kids to grow up in the country. I want them to have, my kids right now are jumping on the trampoline, and they can go out and ride ponies, and they can go play with their chickens. I mean, they can just ride their bikes, and I don't have to worry about them getting hit by a car. And so I commuted for a year when we lived out here to Tualatin. And then the Silverton job popped up, and I applied, and it seemed like it was, I had promised the people at Tualatin I'd get them in a better place, and I felt like I'd done that. And then I really felt like this was just going to be best for my kids. And so one more move, So I've been at Silverton going on year 4 now. I've really enjoyed my time here as well. It's a great football town, really, really supportive. And, my kids will go to Silverton High School. So it's pretty neat to be in the same district as your kids are and being close to them.
You're talking like it's going to be the final destination there for you.
I'm hoping it is. In this profession, you're one bad year or bad day away from getting an apple and a road map. But there's been opportunities to leave, and every time I think about it, I just want to cry. I just really enjoy what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. Feel like I'm all about it. So
Yeah.
that's probably
I want.
longer than you wanted.
That's all right. I mean, that's a hell of a journey right there. Almost
Yeah.
every level: Division two, Division three, junior college, high school, small high school, 6A high school here in Oregon, and now Silverton is what is that 5A, correct? That's an awesome journey, and I feel like, and I'm just kind of speaking for myself here. Like I was exactly just like you were coming out of Linfield, getting my first opportunity at Boise. Really thought I knew a lot about football. We were a big quarters team at Linfield, and then all of a sudden, I'm a defensive back graduate assistant at Boise State. And now we're talking about three match,
Sure.
and I have no idea what the hell is going on. And I always wanted to voice my opinion as the new GA, and kind of wanted to prove myself here and there. And like, I'm just looking back and reflecting. Oh, it sounded such like an idiot, man. Such like an idiot.
I think that's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
When you're a young assistant, when the old guys kind of go, yeah, bud, no. And I feel like this generation coming up, no one's really done that to that generation. And
Yeah.
when they make suggestions and they're not always great or they don't fit, I feel like their feelings get a lot more hurt than you and I were allowed to have. I mean, at Boise State or Southeastern, it doesn't matter. If your feelings are that hurt, then there's 40 more guys that want your job, bud.
No doubt. No doubt.
So, if not more, but nobody cares about your feelings.
I want to go back to something that you touched on. You talked about where you're at, but you talked about who you were doing it with.
Yeah.
And how that is special. Were you referring to your coaching staff, the players, the community, kind of everything, or is it just kind of the convenience of having your family raised up kind of where you were raised up?
I think it's all those things. I think that I build such tight bonds with my assistants because it's such a different relationship than your buddies growing up or your buddies in college. You're in a position where you're highly scrutinized, you and them. I don't care what level of football there is, there are expectations. And you go through some highs and some lows together. And it's, you have people that are choosing to dedicate themselves to young people with you and sacrificing time with their own families for the greater good. And so that bond we had on the Tualatin staff and the one we have here at Silverton, they're just really, really neat and awesome relationships. And I think I enjoy my relationships with my coaches just as much as I do my players. I love the kids. That's one of my favorite part is being around the kids. But, if your coaching staff is miserable and there were some pretty miserable guys I coached with at the college level, and I know you have too. It's just not worth it to be miserable and
No doubt.
It just isn't. Your life's too short.
What was the gentleman's name that the DC you said at Tualatin?
Eric Moen, Linfield
Eric
guy.
Moen. Was he really?
Yeah.
You mentioned that he taught you a lot of things about kind of head coach, assistant coach dynamics. What were some of those things that you kind of could touch on?
Well, I think I would have an idea sometimes, and he would not be afraid in the appropriate way to go, hey, you know what? You need to think about this, and this is what I think. And he would always say, do whatever you want. But he had been in that school for, at that time, 15 years, and I would take a step back and go, no, he's probably right, and we should probably not do that. So he would do that and do it in the right way. Also, I really saw how hard he worked, and sometimes, I've always taken a lot of pride, and I think the head coach should work the hardest. I think that if I want everybody to work hard at watching tape and being prepared, and then I need to work really hard. And he's one of those guys that would make me question sometimes, is he outworking me? Is Eric, is he beating me? And I think too, just scheme wise, I would bounce a lot of scheme stuff off of him. And he was our D coordinator, but sometimes he would say, hey, listen, if you run this, you're going to score. and I wasn't afraid to do it. I think sometimes our egos can be our own enemy in this profession. Um,
That's a good book, by the way. Have you read that book?
is it a good?
It's called Ego is the Enemy.
Yeah,
It's by Ryan Holiday.
yeah.
Really good, really good.
I'll check it out. I
Yeah.
need I need some good reads this summer. Yeah, and we had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I know you kind of touched on this when you're talking, going about your progression, and you started off with your love of football. But if you had to like kind of pinpoint it to like two or three things, like what is the reason and why do you coach?
I think we're losing weight. Encourage toughness in our
That's a
society.
that's a great take.
I think that a tested man is a great man. And I think that this game tests the coaches, it tests the players, it tests the parents. And it's all about really, if you're really doing this the right way, you're trying to prepare kids for long-term success. And I think that teaching them that hard things are okay is one of the greatest lessons anybody can learn in their youth. I feel like we're constantly trying to make everything easier for kids when things do need to be hard, and life is going to be hard. I definitely think you can make it too hard for them and make it a terrible experience, but they need to learn that adversity is good, and kind of embrace the adversity. So I love that it teaches adversity in kids. Two, I think in high school football especially, if a kid works hard, they work in the weight room, and they do the little things, I think you see a bunch of improvement in a critical time of their life. I've had so many kids throughout the years that as freshmen, I thought to myself, wow, man, I don't know if he'll ever play for us. And they absolutely buy in and sell out, and then they just blossom. And you're like, wow, look what that kid did. I didn't do it. He did it. He made himself into a player. And then I think probably the third thing is football is a community based sport, man. I think that everybody's welcome in football. There's 7-on-7 has added a little bit of a club element, but it doesn't have the same club element as baseball and basketball. Everybody's welcome. It doesn't matter if you're big. It doesn't matter if you're small. It doesn't matter if you're thick. It doesn't matter if you're skinny. It doesn't matter if you're black. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter who you voted for. You're welcome in my program, and I think in most programs across the country. If you want to play football, then we'll take you. You don't have cleats? We'll get you cleats. You don't have a lunch? We'll get you a lunch. But if you want to play football, you're more than welcome. And I think on Friday nights, I see people that would disagree. Hold on, bud. Sorry, we got kids running around
Oh,
here.
it's all good.
The last day, half day of school. So, um, I mean, people that don't agree with each other are hugging each other in the stands after a win, or disappointed with each other after a loss. So I love how it brings people together.
That's a great answer, especially the first one.
Yeah,
That's what I was selfishly. This is why I kind of like doing, or why I do like doing this whole podcast
yeah,
thing. Is like one, I get to talk to a bunch of coaches,
sure.
right? And I get to take things and take wisdom and shared experiences from them, and use it for myself. But I've asked that same question many times on the road recruiting, with the other guys I interviewed, and that answer is usually always different. I mean, the question is redundant; it's the same question,
Sure.
but that answer is always different. And I just love what you said. The first thing that you said, as far as encourage toughness, and in order to be a great man, you need to be tested. That was a good take.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take that with me too. I wrote that down on my notes over here. You talked about a little bit your first experience at Jervis. You kind of learned what you didn't know. If you could go back now, I guess to right out of college, Coach Dan Lever, what are some advice that you're giving to your younger self?
I would say a lot to myself. One thing I would say is just slow down and be a little bit more patient.
In career, in life, personal,
I think
everything.
just in everything. When you're young, you want that success now. You want them to be better now. You don't always take into account that that kid's parents are getting a divorce and he's not having a good day. Maybe take it easy. Um, I think scheme-wise, just having a better idea of looking at a group and going, yeah, we're this or we're that. I think when you're younger, you think the play should solve it. When you got to really, in high school especially, you got to be able to adapt to what you have. If you got eggs and bacon, you can't make a cake. But you can make eggs and bacon with eggs and bacon. You can make breakfast. So looking at the ingredients probably and having a better idea of what we can make this into. And I really credit my college experience for that, is just honestly coaching in a lot of different systems. I think that's one of the best things a young guy can do, is just be exposed to as much as possible. So I think those would be some things I'd tell myself, is just be patient, slow down, be patient. I think I've always brought energy to the job. I've always brought my ability to build positive relationships to the job. I think that's the same as it was then, because it was a different version of me then, but the kids knew then that I cared, and they still know that, at least I hope. And when I don't anymore is or I don't have the energy anymore to care as much as I do now, then it's probably time to have somebody else do it. But I think those would be some things. And don't be afraid of a good idea. I think I was not as confident in myself then, and I think there were maybe some ideas that were out there that I said no because I was intimidated by it. And now I think I listen better now. So those are a few things.
If you had to pinpoint, what your coaching philosophy is or your leadership philosophy is, you've mentioned a couple things along the way, obviously communication, developing strong relationships. What would you say your philosophy is?
Man, pinpoint. I mean, I feel like I could talk about my philosophy for hours. I think you've got to put kids in a position to be successful, and they can't be afraid to make mistakes. If they're out there and they're afraid of you and afraid to make a mistake, then they're not going to execute at a high level, and two, they're not going to have any fun doing it. So put them in a position to be successful and make it fun. Make it fun for them. I mean, I selfishly, and this is true, I want my kids to think that playing at Silverton or Tualatin or Jervis was the most fun they ever had in high school, and that they learned something from it.
Can you kind of expand on that, in the sense that obviously providing them an environment for them to be successful and making it fun, but at the same time, like, how are you making sure you guys are staying on track, staying productive, executing?
Sure. Without lifting the hood too much, I think that it's okay to finish practice and play sharks and minnows and laugh. And I think that it's okay to run a couple trick plays in practice every day. And I think it's okay to be appropriate, but joke with your players and let them make fun of you sometimes. It's okay to throw water balloons on a hot day. It's okay to slip and slide on a hot day. And it's okay to be really serious and focused, too. I think, there's a time and a place for being really fun, and there's a time and a place to be serious.
That's perfect. We talked a little bit before we got on. My daughter had a question for you. What is your favorite ice cream? That was from my daughter, Anella.
Man, there's this weird ice cream place in Portland, and it's a chain now. It's called Salt and Straw.
Awesome.
And I had a strawberry balsamic vinegar one time.
That's only supposed to be on a salad right there. Strawberry and balsamic vinegar.
It was healthy, I think. It was weird, but it was really good.
I might have to give it a try. It's been some years since I did salt and straw, but
it's been a long time for me too, because it's far away now. But yeah, man, it was.
That's an interesting flavor. I might just have to stick with Rocky Road, or.
It was better than the cherry and bone marrow.
They did not have that.
Yes.
Why would you even market that?
Man, people were eating it. I don't know.
It was like, this is just so fucked up, I just kind of want to try it. That's probably what it was. All right, kind of moving on to the next section, talking a little bit about team. Now, what are some of the qualities or characteristics that you feel that embody a team, or what a team should be?
Like a good football team?
Yeah.
I think a good football team has got to be physical. And I think that's not something you develop on the football field. I think your program has got to be committed to the weight room. When I coached in college and saw 60 different high schools a year, the good programs that were successful had a definite commitment to the weight room. I think that unbelievably in football on the West Coast, I think in the Midwest and the South they embrace that. It stuns me to this day how many schools and teams and coaches do not understand that value of that. So when I go out there, I can look at your kids for 5 minutes and I know if you are committed to that or not. So physicality. Two, I feel like pursuit and tackling. When I watch teams and they have everybody running to the football and they tackle well in space, I go, that is a good football team. So for me, I want everyone to look at my team and know that we put the time in the off season, and two, know that we are extremely disciplined in how we pursue and how we tackle. And number three, I think that you have got, at any level of football, there has to be a committed effort program wide to having a great offensive line. And I don't think your kids in high school need to be 6'5", 300 to have that. I think that I got to move venues here.
They got to take the TV over.
Oh, there's just all kinds of stuff going on. I think that it's a pretty good view out here. What do you think?
Let me see. Dang.
Not
How many
bad.
acres you guys got? How many acres you guys got out
20.
there?
We got 20.
Wow.
I think when I watch teams and they've got a great offensive line that's technical and physical and runs off the ball and communicates, I think that now my battery's going to die. I'm going to grab my charger. I think that that's something that I want my teams to be committed to. And that scares the hell out of me when I'm watching tape on somebody. You know, if they, because on offense, we talked about defense, pursuit and tackle. On offense, if you're not good up front, you can move the ball, but it's not going to be forwards. It's going to be backwards. So I don't care if you're an air raid or if you're a wing T or power I, you've got to be able to block to give your guys a chance to get the ball.
I like that answer as far as number three being having a really good offensive line. Do you think there's a correlation between, obviously you have a good old line, you can do some things on offense, you can be a productive offense, but do you think there's a correlation, I guess, because in order to be a good old line, and you know this better than I do, there has to be so much cohesiveness and trust within the group, but do you think that kind of matriculates over to the whole team?
I think so. I think it permeates. Also, I tell those guys that you have to be the leaders on this team. You know, you go to Ohio State or you go to Alabama, it's not the skill guys that run the show. It's usually the offensive and defensive lines that tell everybody how it's going to be, because are they going to mess with you? You know, if you're not being a team guy and the whole offensive line says, hey, you know, that's not how we do things. The message is gonna get across. So I do think that communication and dominance can permeate to your whole program.
Talking about that a little bit, you're talking about when an old lineman speaks up, you know, a lot of people listen. Talk to me a little bit. Are you empowering a lot of the players? Like, how are you going about like sharing responsibility or sharing leadership with the players?
We have a leadership council. I think a lot of people do. We meet and go through some things. You know, one thing I always tell them, and I really believe this, is for my seniors especially, I unless I make a mistake or decide not to, I'm going to coach football next year. You're not guaranteed to play next year. So when you look back, what do you want this experience to be? Are we going to bicker and fight, or are we going to be together? I think that's one way I try to empower my seniors especially, but I don't think you have to be a senior to be a leader too. I think some programs want their seniors only to lead, and you know, I think there's a lot of kids that have that within them. And sometimes there's private conversations that you have to have by going, hey man, you can speak up. I really think you work hard and your teammates will listen to you. Because I think kids are super hard on themselves at this stage in the game, and they're always worried about their image and trying to get them to be vocal and direct, because it always means more when it's player to player than me to the player. I think great cultures, the kids are policing themselves. You've heard it, and I've heard it a million times. A player-led team goes much further than a coach-led team. And I believe that. I feel like I've been the coach on the coach-led team, and the team didn't go as far as I wanted them to. And it's because either I didn't empower them enough or they didn't empower themselves enough to take over and maintain the standard. Anyway, that's a long answer.
No, it was good. Great answer, though. Generally speaking, the leaders on your team, are they your better players, or are they guys that are just doing everything the right way, working their ass off? Or is it kind of a mix of both?
I think that
Who are they gravitating towards?
I think naturally in high school, we all kind of assume that the best players should be the leaders, and I think the kids look to that at first. But I always like to talk about the glue guys in our program. We call them glue guys. And it's not the guy that gets his name called or the guy that gets any media attention or is even all conference. And I do everything I can to talk about those glue guys and how much they mean to the program and where we would or wouldn't be without them. In some years, I feel like those guys are empowered to take on more of a role, and sometimes they don't. And I think I'd be a rich man if I knew why they did and why they didn't. But you never know, man. And I think that's one thing that's great about this game too is the puzzle's always different when you're talking about human beings. Every year, it's a little different. The group's a little different than the previous one.
Have you noticed a difference in? Because we've talked about it a little bit at this level, just kind of how kind of when we were playing high school ball, like you could take a lashing from a coach,
Sure.
and it was the norm. You know what I mean? It was a part of it. That's just what it was.
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything from when, or has your approach changed from when you were the head coach at Jervis to now you're the head coach at Silverton? And as far
I
as
think so. I think that this generation is used to knowing why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important? I think the era I came up in was you just do it, And I think that if you can explain why and get the kids to buy in why we are doing this way, then they'll do it. They will do it, and they'll do it just as good as me and my buddies would have. But the why is important. And from my perspective, I'm kind of with the kids. If you can't explain why, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. If you don't have a philosophy of why, then I'm with the kids. Why the hell are we doing this, coach? You can't explain why, So the why really matters, and I think now I invest in the why. Early on, I was kind of just do it and don't ask questions. And I probably didn't even know the why at that point. And I see youth football coaches really get caught in that because they tend to do what was done to them. And one thing I try to work with youth coaches when I talk to them is just because that's the way it was doesn't mean it was good, So
that's funny that you're talking about just the why. And now I'm at that stage. My daughter's about to turn 4 this year.
Yeah.
And if you say no, she's hitting you with why? But I'm working on it, and I'm just like, because I said so. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's kind of funny. It's just like there's so much commonalities with, and I do think being a parent kind of makes you a better coach.
100%.
Because you have to simplify your communication so much to the point where you have to put it in words that they can understand. I feel like if you can explain it to a toddler, you can explain it to a middle schooler. You can explain it to a middle school, you can explain it to a high school. Explain it to a high school, you can explain it to a college.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Being a parent made me better.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. Aside from communication.
I understood where parents were coming from more.
Gotcha. You can empathize with them a little bit more than...
I really can. Not that I agree with their behavior, but I understand that you're dealing with something that somebody loves the most, or should, and when they drop their kid off with you, they're putting a lot of trust in you. So I think that I really take that pretty seriously.
As you should. You should. I like asking this question, and another coaches had some really good answers. What metrics do you use? And when I asked them, I said, aside from winning, And I kind of got laughed at for saying winning. So what other metrics do you use to define, your success as a coach?
I think and turnovers. Are we turning the ball over, and then are we creating turnovers? I think that average starting field position is a huge metric I like to use. That's a huge indicator of your success moving the football and defending the field. Those are two big ones. I think that
If you were to remove it from the field, like if we're talking away from the field, not the result.
sure.
What are some things, like one coach said wedding invitations, another one said grad party invitations.
For six. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I got too technical.
No, I didn't do a good job elaborating on that.
I don't. I have a survey I send out at the end of each season, and there's a lot of questions on there, and one of them is playing football at Silverton High School fun? Yes or no? And that's a metric I use. And then the other one is, if I was head football coach for a day, what would I change? And some of the answers are very thought provoking, and some of them are pretty funny. And some of them are what you would expect that kid to say. But some of them are thought-provoking. And that's a metric I think that's some feedback I use every year is for the experience of it.
I like that you do that. I like that you send out a survey.
I think when I initially did it, my staff was very worried, because some guys don't want to know the answer. They don't want them to say, I would fire so-and-so on your staff. That's what I would do for a day. No one's ever said that. Or I hate coach so-and-so, no one's ever said that. But they are great. Some of them are very thought-provoking. And then I do exit interviews with our seniors.
Yeah.
And I think that's a metric I use too, is really tell them, in this meeting, you can say whatever you want. At this point, I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you for your time and your service, and you can say anything you want. And I think that's a metric I use is, how does that meeting go? And again, sometimes I'll bring up the survey about, maybe they had a concern, and it's kind of an opportunity for me to explain why. We did that because of this, and you probably didn't know that. And that doesn't always make, heal whatever wound there is, but at least they walk away knowing, hey, I know everything I should know, and I gave them feedback. It's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think reflection and the way that you're doing it,
Yeah.
is essential to keep on adapting and keep on wanting to improve. But it's kind of led me into one of the other questions I had. Talking about like a self-scout process, is that more so as a head coach? Is your self-scout process, are you looking at your operations? Are you looking at team dynamics and culture first and then scheme? Like, what does that look like in the off season? Aside from your survey, because I do think what you're talking about with your survey is very valuable.
I think I learn a lot being in the weight room with them about
Yeah.
I don't think they realize how closely I'm watching. I'm watching the kid, and he does 8 pull-ups instead of 10. And I don't always jump them, but I do make the note of, okay, well, I got to watch you. You're somebody I got to watch. Or how they treat their buddies in the weight room, I think I learn a lot by just observing them through the course of the year, how they interact with each other, who they spend time with, who they don't spend time with, who they avoid, And sometimes I'll try to manufacture some relationship building, like when we do our team building unity night to start the year. I'm going to put them in groups with guys they don't spend time with, to try to build some relationships there. Or we're going to go on a road trip this year. I'm going to make them sit by somebody they never sit by or are around, to try to manufacture some better relationships. So that's my off the field metric. It's just really me observing, and then we're always talking personnel with our staff about where somebody fits or where could they add value. But then the scheme part comes, and that's a whole nother animal in its own.
Well, shoot, Coach. I mean, I really Really appreciate your time, and I
Yeah,
know you're
man.
just finishing up school, and you got Disneyland coming up. So I guess my
Yeah, I got
final.
a bunch of yard work and
What are you most excited about with Disneyland? What are you, the log ride? What are you going on?
dude, I don't know what I'm excited to play with my kids in the pool. Just watch them see Disney, experience Disney. Because I remember when I went as a kid, it was just like, this is amazing. I think I'm excited for their reaction to the experience.
It's always fun. I get Happy Meals with my daughter after school every once in a while, and
There you go, man.
she says it's her favorite thing ever, but she says favorite for a lot of things. So, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that is one of the most rewarding parts about being a parent is seeing them happy.
Yeah.
Is there any quotes, acronyms, values, principles, anything that you, in closing remarks, that you live by or your program adheres to?
I think that the acronyms, and this is going to be unpopular, I think the acronyms are way overdone. I think it's become cheesy, to be honest with you. Everybody has one. I'm real simple. We talk about running to the battle, whatever that is. Whether it's
Well, RTB, baby. I remember Will had a shirt of that
did
somewhere.
he?
That's where,
I talk
yeah.
about running to the battle because there's always a battle that you've got to get through in life. Whether it's practice, whether it's school, whether it's relationships, there's some kind of adversity, and we can run from it, or we can go right at it, and we can try to attack it and make it better. And so that's what we talk about: run to the battle.
I love it.
And it's simple, but I think that it applies to just about every facet of life if you want to.
No doubt. I think it applies to every facet
Yeah.
because all it is decision making.
Make make a decision and live with it, and hopefully it's a good one.
Well, shoot, Coach. Appreciate your
Yeah,
time,
man,
man.
thank you. Thank you. That was fun. That's always fun. Cut out my transitions all over the house, would you?
No, we gotta let those ride, baby. We gotta
Anybody
let
that
those
knows
ride.
me will giggle because they know I am always moving.
Have fun at Disneyland, all
All
right?
right, brother. You too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
I'll see you.